The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated.
I'd like to welcome everyone back to the Nova Society. I'm your host, Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, and I'm here with my panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Mark Bound. And today we have a guest, Dr. Jared Obel, who is a global expert in post-conflict development. And Dr. Bell is a former U.S. Foreign Service officer with USAID, where Dr. Bell led democracy, human rights, and rule of law programs in challenging environments worldwide. Dr. Bell has written several books, one called Frozen Justice, and Dr. Bell's commentary has appeared in The Hill, Al Jazeera Balkans, Dissident Voice, and other international outlets. So, Dr. Bell, we are delighted to have you with us, and you are a policy lab expert in UNESCO, and we do have a question today from one of our listeners regarding UNESCO. Our listener is from Little Rock, Arkansas. Listener is Brian. Brian asks, Trump is now pulling the U.S. out of UNESCO. I was under the impression this was an organization that designated historical sites like the Grand Canyon and was where nations could share scientific discoveries. It seems Trump is moving the U.S. more and more toward isolationism. Although I think these are all stupid moves, what could possibly be the reason for making the U.S. go everything alone? Dr. Bell?
Thank you very much, and thank you for that question. If we look back to 2017, this removing of the United States from UNESCO isn't new. The Trump administration did it during his first term as well. The United States was also removed from UNESCO during the Reagan era, and then was rejoined again by Bush, and then rejoined again by the Biden administration once Obama had moved, the Trump administration had removed the United States from UNESCO. So the overall idea is that it's a major shame, in particular in terms of removing from UNESCO. Right now, globally, we're in a major turning point in technology, and that's with AI. And UNESCO goes just beyond preserving sites of cultural heritage. It also particularly focuses on scientific cooperation that includes technology. And so, with the U.S. kind of removed from this space, the U.S. is missing an important voice at the table around technology and how technology can be used in education, and how technology can be used in terms of work and even in development. So this is a major ding, I would say, for the U.S. But I think the listener also makes a good point. This also corresponds to other major aspects of where the United States is removing itself, and one of the key, obviously, aspects of that is the dismantling of USAID, for one, and also the firing of 1,300 State Department Foreign Service officers. So we do see this kind of, I would say, unprecedented move to move the United States in this more isolationist era currently. But if that's strategic, does it make sense? If you ask me, no, of course not. Right now, the United States the U.S. adversaries, Russia and China, are going to continue to operate around the world, and now you don't have the United States key organizations like USAID or robust diplomatic core to counter those effects, and that includes technology, that includes education, that includes those things that the United States worked so poignantly on over the years. We're kind of seeing a blow to that. The idea of isolationism in the United States, as I don't think people will get or understand, that's not a place that we want to be. And I think particularly right now, when we have a whole slew of problems from a pandemic, for instance. The pandemic is a wonderful reason why we don't want to be isolationist, right? Or the global conflicts are on the rise, disease, whatever the case is. We want the United States to be at the table, and we want the United States to be a major player in this, especially, as I said, since Russia and China aren't particularly backing down. The one part we look at this is, this is all politics, right? This is America first, ideologies, America first foreign policy. But if we explicate that doesn't really make any sense, because if we want America first, then we want the United States sitting at all these tables, right? That's putting America first, not relegating the United States back in terms of foreign policy. So I think these are short-sighted political check marks that the Trump administration is trying to achieve. but it's not going to go anywhere. I mean, it's just putting politics in front of strategy, and I think that's going to lead to disaster.
So what do you envision going forward? What happens long term with USAID being dismantled? And I had not realized that Reagan removed the U.S. from UNESCO, and then we were put back in and out, in and out. Dismantling USAID and really withdrawing the United States from global affairs, plus horrific treatment of our allies with these tariffs. What do you see happening long term? I mean, Trump is not going to be around forever. Is it possible to move all this back and actually reestablish the United States? Or do you see this damage as being permanent and the United States as being sort of shuffled back?
I think that's an excellent question. Let's harken back to history and what did they used to say about Britain, right? The sun never sets on the British Empire. So I think we can say that all empires fall at some point, and not to be dramatic or not to be doomsayer or conspiracy theorist, but I mean, unfortunately, I think the United States is going to lose its place as this kind of global hegemon. So what I see moving forward is this is unprecedented, and I think it's going to take decades to repair what's been done in the last 6 months. Just in terms of, how, for instance, let's talk about USAID. USAID, we particularly had something, what we call DOAGs. These are development agreements with countries. We rescinded those. So we had relationships and agreements with countries to help in their development, and we just said, nope. So we rescinded those. So how can anyone trust the United States again? So that undermines, our voice, particularly on that, right? In terms of, being a cooperative partner. Moving beyond the USAID point, these tariffs are being put on Canada, being put on Mexico. How does that make us stronger in terms of allyship, and how does that put America first if we're causing issues or pestering our neighbors when we have trade agreements with Canada and Mexico, right? So I think what this is it's an appeal to populism. That this appeal to as I said, this appeal to populism and to the MAGA base who they want to see that this America is going to be first. But unfortunately, I don't think people understand what America being first did or what it looks like. And so the answer to the question of how do we see things long term, I think it's going to be a detrimental place for the United States where the United States isn't, as I said before, isn't at the table to talk about key and important things. Or I think the biggest fear that I regret or that we will see is that the United States is looked upon as not being a reliable partner and not being as looked upon as being in a space where we were once a leader, and that's happening, unfortunately. And we're at a place where, how do I say this in a but kind of a joke at the moment. I mean, politics aside, I mean, look, I can go back and I can disagree with many aspects of the Bush war on terror, of course, which was disastrous for many reasons, and the Obama administration kind of continued to perpetuate that war on terror, but in a different way. But we're seeing something that we've never seen before in a way that I think is so hard to assess the damage because this is so unprecedented. We know there have been estimates that, despite some, Marco Rubio and parts of the higher levels of the State Department saying, well, this isn't true, but, estimates show that, there could be 14 million die as a result of the lack of, assistance from USAID, for instance. 500 metric tons are due to be incinerated of food aid because it's gone bad, because things have sat in warehouses from the point of January when in February when aid was frozen. So this isn't a good look on the part on the United States. And despite this idea that we're saving millions of tax dollars, we're not actually. The money that we're saving, we've wasted millions and millions of tax dollars over the last 7 months when things could have been gone to supporting foreign assistance, supporting aid. But as I said, like the United States in general, I think the world's outlook is going to change dramatically for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. Jared, is Scott. Hey. I wanted to, like you've been through it, with the three of us sit in our various houses here, and we talk about these things, we teach, we read a lot, we write a little bit, but you've been out there living it. And so what's been your experience these last few months? It must have been really, really painful, I would imagine.
Thank you for asking that, Scott. So there's two sides. Oh my God, there's so many facets of this. For me, there is the facet of, number one, being a U.S. diplomat. There is the facet of also being someone who I've committed my entire career to international development. This is what I've done my entire career. And now, by the way, the international development sector was murdered literally in 30 days. There are almost no jobs in these sectors, no contracts, no anything, right? And then I come to this as the part of a U.S. citizen as well, and an informed U.S. citizen. So the part of the U.S. as a U.S. diplomat, I have to say that I feel beyond betrayed in the sense that many of us went to on behalf of USAID to further U.S. interest, despite what's propagated or the lies and the stretched truth and exaggerations about USAID. Look, I can tell you right now, I worked for USAID off and on for almost 10 years now. I can tell you I have many, many, many disagreements the way how some aid has been rolled out, but it didn't warrant this dramatic dismantling of U.S. aid. And, we know what happened in terms of why and how that happened. And then, the Secretary of State, obviously in the position he's in, continue to, despite Marco Rubio supporting USAID earlier on, kind of double down on these aspects that came from the Trump administration. So that side of the diplomat is that's very painful that our government basically betrayed us, and all of us, and especially those of us who go to difficult places to serve. I was in Nicaragua, which is Nicaragua's a full-on dictatorship where, me and my spouse, we encountered surveillance. My spouse was photographed. I was photographed leaving. We had our phones tapped at times. And then, there are colleagues of mine who went to the DRC and who were just evacuated, and they had to get up and literally leave their stuff. And they lost stuff in DRC to only come back maybe a month and a half later and be basically, castigated by the president and Elon Musk for being criminals. So that's heartbreaking. I mean, it's kind of, for many people who, I won't say this for myself because I have a career beyond diplomacy and formally with USAID, but this is a lifestyle. When you commit to international development and you're working, and this is a lifestyle. This is like being a priest. This is like being a truck driver, whatever it is, a chef. This is a lifestyle. This isn't just a job for many people, and so. There, as a diplomat, there's the painful part, and the other side is, as a development worker, it's also heartbreaking to see that the international development sector has been murdered, and now we in the face of the situation in Gaza, Ukraine, Tigray, what happens? I mean, USAID and the United States was a leading force in terms of supporting food aid and medicine and even some of the training programs to counter extremism. What happens in some of these cases, right? I mean, again, it's so early to tell, and I think everyone's still shell shocked. Sometimes I still shake my head and be like, wait, is this real life? I mean, this happens to me like once a week. That are we really here? And third, I come at this as a U.S. Citizen, an informed U.S. citizen, is that I regret to see where our country is going in terms of globally, because that is one of the proud things about being an American is that we have this we have a checkered past at points, but the United States has always been able to be a reliable partner. And having served in a place like Bosnia, people look to the United States like to be the moral voice. I mean, how many times when people ask, well, what's the U.S. embassy going to say about the political situation in Bosnia when Bosnia's President Milorad Dodik continues his antics and undermining the Dayton Constitution, and the United States strongly comes out and speaks against that. Well, now what can we say? Or the backtracking on human rights in terms of gutting DRL and gutting parts of the State Department human rights report that focused on civil and human rights, personal civil and human rights, LGBTQI plus rights. So there's this idea that we're retreating into a place that's totally unrecognizable as a citizen as well as a diplomat and a development practitioner.
Yeah, and I imagine also that there's a security element to this. You guys were our eyes and ears on the ground. If something was happening when you were in Nicaragua or Bosnia, if something was happening, we would probably hear it from you before we heard it from anywhere else.
You want to know something interesting, Scott? That's a great point. Do you know who the military loved to operate in conjunction with? USAID, right? When there were high-level panels discussion between the Pentagon, in Congress, several key military leaders said, "Hey, you know what? Development is a very much important part of what we do. We can't do this without USAID. We can't do this without foreign assistance. Foreign assistance just goes beyond food aid. It goes on, democratization and governance programs. It goes anti-corruption, economic development, agricultural support, agricultural development, strengthening business enabling environments for American businesses to invest in developing countries." So I definitely agree with you here, Scott, that USAID particularly were the eyes and ears of what was going on, and we had a mandate from Congress. So, but what people don't realize is, so when USAID we get funding, we submit what we call congressional notification, and in that congressional notification, we tell Congress for USAID was $15 million. USAID Nicaragua was $15 million. We tell Congress how we're going to spend that $15 million, and then Congress goes and says, okay, well, this is what we want you to do with that money. And it could be something as simple as what they wanted us to do with a lot of the money was focus on civil society development, and encountering the current regime in Nicaragua. That's what Congress wanted us to do. So when you hear these antics, particularly that saying that USAID operated solely and took money that Congress didn't know it was spending, I mean, that's complete nonsense. Congress approves every dime that USAID spends, and that's how it's set up. I mean, there's a huge bureaucratic layer of oversight of USAID funding. So yeah, it really is a shame that, again, it's unfathomable to how that's going to play out. Where we had USAID senior development advisors posted in the Pentagon, at U.S. commands in Germany in the South Pacific. So this is how important development was to our success in terms of military goals as well, right? And I think we're gonna miss out on that.
Yeah, I imagine that's true. That the point you made there about Congress and oversight brings me back to something that one of the congressmen said about Doge. When Doge was operating and cutting and slashing and all kinds of stuff. And there was a congressman, I forget who it was, but he was on one of the Sunday morning shows. And he said, Congress can't do this kind of oversight. Congress, we don't have the ability or the technical skills or the time to do this. And my first reaction was, people, if you're out there listening to us and you've got a congressman that you don't believe can do oversight, takes the time out of their day to make sure that they're doing their job in oversight, fire that congressman, get somebody else, elect somebody else. That's the huge part of their job. And it's ridiculous to say that they can't or won't do it.
No, I think that's an excellent point. And, Congress, with U.S. tax dollars, and, Congress employs, hundreds of staffers to do this work, and very intelligent people who work on the Hill, who do brief Congress. So if Congress says that they don't have the time, and that's not true. I mean, that's their job. I mean, that, as you said, that's their key job, is to make sure Congress has the strings of the purse. So it's up to them to decide and monitor how money is spent. So anyone who said that this didn't happen, but they didn't know that hypothetically, funding went to quote unquote transgender operations or operas or whatever these people claim this week, then they're not being honest with you, because if that's the case, then what we call CNs. There have been many CNs, congressional notifications, that are held up on the Hill. If congressional representatives have questions, then a Nicaraguan mission doesn't get their funding until the questions are answered. Plain and simple. That's how it's always operated. So I find it very hard to believe that there were these kind of clandestine programs for transgender operations that the U.S. congressional representatives didn't know. And if they didn't know, then shame on them, because as you just said, Scott, that's their job to know.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mark.
Well, I'm very, very surprised that Jared brought up that we can't trust our congresspeople. I mean, that's like a news flash that, congresspeople can't be trusted. I totally believe in that. I look at this and with USAID, and I think, it goes back. Of course, I like the historical look at things. Things like USAID, UNESCO, agencies like this prior to us beginning to pull ourselves back into isolationism and actually back into probably, I would say, the 19th century as far as our relationship with the rest of the world. It kind of goes back to after World War II, because you had the Marshall Plan and you had the Truman Doctrine. And even though the Marshall Plan was for Western Europe rebuilding after war and the Truman Doctrine was really to stop communism from spreading, I think all the programs that we've had, including USAID, has been to create the environment for us to have democracies and stable governments that we can work with. Now, granted, the people that work in USAID, they're there trying to do development, granted. But of course, the United States has its own agenda in this. Yes, we want somebody we can work with, and we want somebody that we can, kind of have on our side, our little empire going on there, because, hey, we helped you. Now this is what we need out of you. And again, that's world politics. And I think that what's happening today, as I say, are moving back to a foreign policy of the 19th century. I think that is a memory of the electorate. We forgot about. I'm sure you could go out there today and take 200 average voters and say, what was the Marshall Plan? They won't be able to tell you. Or what was the Truman Doctrine? Won't be able to tell you, because we got so comfortable. We got comfortable being what we considered and everybody considered the superpower. We got comfortable with that. And now we're saying, hey, we don't need anybody else. Forgetting the fact that what got us to where we are today was the Marshall Plan and the Truman Doctrine and and USAID and all those things that came afterwards. So, I mean, the question is, where does this go from here? I agree with Jared. I think that we're going to be the laughingstock, and I think one of the things we have to remember. Nation states act exactly as you would expect them to. That was part of my dissertation back in the day. The fact that they act a lot, they take on the personality of their own. And just like human beings, once trust is lost, it is massively difficult to get it back. Now, I've said on this podcast numerous times, if Trump got reelected, we probably would not get back to sane politics in the United States until 2036, maybe now 2040. And Scott always kind of laughs when he hears that. He kind of chuckles. I would say it, but I'm going to tell you this. If we don't elect somebody in 2028 and 2032 that the rest of the world believes they can trust, our relationship with the rest of the world, our standing in the rest of the world, might take even longer than that, than our cleaning our own house. We have to show that we're sensible enough for the rest of the world to trust us again. And I hope we go back to UNESCO in 2028. I really do. I hope USAID is put back where it belongs, on the forefront of foreign policy. But the fact that right now, America first is all about America only. And I guess my question to you, Jerry, would be, how in the heck do we explain to the average American voter who has probably no idea what UNESCO is, probably has no clue about what UNESCO does, and USAID actually was about, other than by what they're being told by the people that are dismantling it? How do we get that message out there for people to be able to figure this out, even if they can?
I think that's an excellent point, and excellent. And this is something, I will be honest, and I think this is such a fantastic point. This is something USA struggled with, and I think internally, once this dismantling happened, we all started talking among ourselves, and you know why it happened? USA did not have a constituency, and let's be honest, that's what it is. We did not have a constituency where everyday Americans, we have people here in D.C. who get it, in New York who get it, in Chicago who get it. You guys get it, but you have PhDs and you're educated. I'm from Western Pennsylvania. I kind of grew up out in the sticks. So how would I sit down and explain that? If I even explain that, many people don't even know what I do for you. My family doesn't even know. So it's some of my family think I work for the FBI, right? No, really.
Yeah.
So it's very difficult to get that message out, and to understand, what UNESCO is about. UNESCO is about education, for instance, or UNESCO, for instance, has also championed Holocaust education that many people don't realize. And unfortunately, with many Gen Z, statistics show that many younger people don't know or understand that the Holocaust was a real thing, right? So, to go back to the question of how do we educate people, and I think it's breaking this down for people's level to understand what it is that they get for their tax dollars for that 1%. And I think that's where people had failed. Last year, I think, maybe 2 years ago, Samantha Power, the former USAID administrator, and she's been a powerhouse in this, not in development, but, human rights and accountability. And she was UN ambassador. Samantha Power went on, it was Stephen Colbert, and she talked about USAID. This was the first time a USAID administrator had ever gone on any kind of late night show and talked about USAID and talked about our mission. And that was great. People probably learned something about USAID, but that's not enough to build a constituency. These are things that people have to get out and people have to talk about with their communities, and to see how their communities are impacted by this. To say, hey, well, wait a minute. If USAID is not there to provide support for Ebola in Africa, you know what? That's going to come knocking on your door, right? If USAID is not there to support and facilitate, COVID relief, which USAID did a lot of, COVID would have spread even further. So I think it's about understanding what USAID prevents. That many, as you said, Scott, as you said, Mark, that's an excellent point. Americans we've gotten to this post World War II environment where we've gotten so comfortable in terms of the United States being the superpower, and this was through strategy and planning. This is what Kennedy foresaw in 1961 with the creation of USAID and Peace Corps, and it wasn't just a counter communism, but Kennedy said, well, wait a minute, we want friends, we're likely to do business with, and people want to work with us if they can trust us, if they can see us as a reliable partner. And this is something that we've built, for the last, since 1961 in terms of USA, but in other programs as well. I mean, I think that also stands as a moral voice for the United States too. So I think we have to educate people, meet them where they are, in terms of understanding, what these organizations do, and what people are getting out of it for their tax dollars, for 1%. And to be honest, when it's the flaw of the development sector. I'm going to be honest, hundreds of thousands of dollars did go to what we call Beltway bandits, who would implement USAID activities. USAID at one point did implement its own activities in probably the 60s and 70s, but that got laborious when you were trying to implement several activities with so many limited USAID foreign service officers and local staff, right? But people don't even understand that part of it, that how much money goes to contractors. But But a lot of this does go to do actually good work. So to go back, I think it's about educating people so people get the message and breaking it down on their level. USAID supported a lot of farmers, right? The food aid that we were sending overseas came from American farmers. That's a market that's now gone, right? And also that USAID supported believe one way or the other, there was like a sub economy related to USAID contractors. I mean, look at we don't see this now, but I worked before I joined the Foreign Service. I worked for ABA Arroyo as a regional program manager for Europe and Central Asia, and these grants and these as an implementer, it funded people's homes, people's mortgages, so it's just we've removed this kind of sub economy that will have an impact on the United States, especially in this DC, Maryland, Virginia area, along with the other firings. We don't see it yet because many people have savings, people are still spending, or some people may be getting severances or whatever. But this is going to have a long-term economic impact on the country as well that we don't see yet.
Well, I think one of our biggest problems is we can't convince the American people that they voted for the wrong guy in 2016 and 2024. Trying to explain to them something is far more complex than USAID, and the importance of UNESCO may be well beyond our current status in the United States today.
That's true. That's true.
So, all right, Brooke, I think we beat that one to death.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Bell. It's been a great pleasure to have you on our show today, and we would like.
He'll be back.
Yes, he will be back
next time.
So we would like to thank Brian from Little Rock, Arkansas, and thank you to all our listeners for spending some time with us today. We encourage everyone to subscribe to the Nova Society on whatever your preferred platform is. Subscribing is free, and we really appreciate it. Do send us your questions and comments. We appreciate those. So for Scott, Mark, and me at the Nova Society, thank you for listening. Stay safe, and we will see you next time on the Nova Society.
The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We'd like to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing partners, Apple iTunes, the largest source of podcasts and music on the internet, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your source for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. We'd also like to thank all of our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society would not be possible. If you have a question or comment, we can be reached at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So for Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershwer, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power in society is knowledge. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, BH Conflict Resolution Services, a full-service dispute resolution firm offering expert, cost-effective mediation services to couples, groups, and businesses. BHCRS can be reached at www.bhcrs.com.